As stated by Human Rights Watch on October 2nd, 2022, Abdel Somar, an Algerian journalist, was sentenced to death. You see, Algeria is very well known for its human rights violations, specifically under President Tebboune. Now, in modern day, the elections just finished and Tebboune got his second term. Because of this, many people have begun to protest the election, calling it rigged and incapable of suiting democracy within Algeria, which has really made people ask the question of, is Algeria on the verge of political instability following re-election of President Tebboune to his second term? Now, the answer to this question, weirdly enough, is no, because they were never a stable country to begin with. You see, although firstly, Algerian elections do increase instability, they are not, secondly, the cause of it. And thirdly, and perhaps even most importantly, Tebboune is not changing anything in Algeria. All its problems have existed for at least 4 to 24 years. But before we understand the stagnation of Algeria as a country, we firstly need to understand elections. As stated by AP News, September 8th, 2024, this election gave Tebboune a roughly 94% approval rate with a 50% turnover rate. So 50% of the population voted and 94% of those voters supposedly voted for him. Now, keep in mind, as stated by the Washington Post, September 10th, 2024, Algeria is actually very well known for rigging its elections, for the last president rigging its elections for its 4 terms before Tebboune officially became president. As a result of this and the absurd approval rating, the only thing that came as a result of the elections, regardless of his presidency, was a mass amount of protest, increasing the inability for the government and for society as a whole to function in a holistic and consistent, stable manner. Now, although, yes, those elections did produce instability, they are not the cause for it. You see, secondly, as stated by the Council of Foreign Relations in 2019, instability within Algeria actually came as a result of French colonialist rule, forcing groups of people to make a government that had no business being in a government together. And even more specifically, making it almost impossible for any one political group to have enough power for enough time to make any real substantial change within the government. Not only producing stagnation, but also instability within that stagnation. Nobody could make change and nobody could have control, making everyone want to fight for control. Now, the other point, as stated by Al Jazeera this year, 2024, the other reason why Algeria never had any sort of stability in the first place is because of their inability to control their own oil factories and their oil production, typically needing some outside force like America or when they were a colony, France. However, what this effectively produces is I need a father figure type country. And I don't know about you, but an 18-year-old still living in his mother's basement isn't the most stable life form imaginable. As a result of this inherent unstable structure within Algeria, even though the elections do increase instability, they did not cause it. So they are not, by any means, on the verge of political instability because they've been politically unstable. But now that we understand the source of political instability, we need to thirdly understand that these issues, even only politically speaking, have always existed, specifically within Tebboune's presidency. As stated by Euronews just last month, Tebboune's oppression of media and media production that goes against the government, criticizing the government, has existed ever since Tebboune was a government, and he doesn't have any plans of changing his views when it comes to media control. What this effectively means is that the problems, although might get slightly worse, were always there to begin with. With no change in sight, it's irresponsible to say we're on the verge of political instability. And finally, the nail in the coffin, as stated by France 24, a French news source typically reporting on French and Algerian French colonialist places. Tebboune simply wants power. He does not care about his people. He does not care about his government. He simply wants power and whatever he needs to not be criticized for having it. As a result, he will do the same thing he has always done. Which means when we take a step back and we re-ask the question of, is Algeria on the verge of political instability following the re-election of President Tebboune for his second term in office, the answer is no, because they were never a stable country to begin with. Firstly, because political elections in Algeria have significantly increased instability within the government and within its people. And secondly, it was never the source of it to begin with. So the, quote, verge of political instability is just factually incorrect. And thirdly, and I'd argue most importantly, Tebboune has not changed. He will do what he has always done, and what he has always done is political and social oppression. You see, we in America have a habit of talking about our issues in a grand scale, even when they're really not that big, because we're not used to having really big problems. But in Algeria, a death sentence is as simple as putting pen to paper.